Hello, I'm JJ, otherwise known as the Practical Alchemist, and I have somebody who has created some alchemy here today. His name is Nathaniel Hughes, and he has, in collaboration with a wonderful artist, produced a book and a card deck that really is an alchemical process in the making for anybody who engages with it. And we'll talk more about that in a second. But first, just to say, if you like this content, if you like this video, please say so. Leave me a like. And if you like this channel, please do subscribe so that you know what's coming up in the near future. But before we go in any further, here's Nathaniel. Well, you've written a beautiful book in collaboration with a wonderful artist. She has made the most fantastic contribution or collaboration with her paintings. They're beautiful, and her name is Fiona Owen.
Oh,
And you,
yeah, but each one of those it takes about a month, and they're incredibly detailed oil paintings, and
they,
they're almost A4 size to start, and
they
they're
are
so detailed at that
stupendous.
point. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
they're absolutely stupendous, and you can see the detail in them. They're wonderful. And the book is Wild Enchantments. Nathaniel Hughes and Fiona Owen are the well, I would say creators of this fabulous book, because it's not just a book, it's a herbal kind of, and there's a deck of cards to go with it. And as I'm holding it up, I can see the beautiful gold leaf shining in the light there. And on the front cover is one of my favorite plants, and that is the rose. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that later. But what was the intention behind this book? As I say, it's a beautiful collaboration of art and, well, just conversation and knowing and getting connected with plants. So, what was the intention behind it?
So I think underlying it was we wanted to encourage people uh, to step into their fascination with plants and give them some doorways to help them do that. So instead of telling people about plants, what we've done is really approach it more in a more lyrical way with storytelling, the artwork rich in symbolism, and the text is entirely experiential. So it's based on my experiences. I've been teaching for about 20 years, so the experiences of all my students and my clients. And what we're hoping is that by sharing actual experiences, we help encourage people to go deeper into their experiences. There's something about creating a space for us to really notice what's happening with a plant, slowing down enough for that to happen. But it's not just that, it's also really validating those experiences and taking those as meaningful and realizing that what's happening in this particular dynamic, this particular relationship, you and the plant, is unique to you, but it's also important. So there's something about really encouraging relationship in this herbal, as
Yeah.
opposed to giving information.
And also not referring to plants as objects in a way, which is what a lot of herbals do. Plants are seen as a resource. They're seen just as an object, maybe, yes, growing in nature, but you take it much further than that. It's much more. I've used the words immersive and sumptuous because Fiona's paintings are just beautiful. I could lose myself in any one of them. So it is this immersive experience. And you do find, as I'm reading through some of the chapters, I find myself really falling into that correspondence, even though I'm not in front of the actual plant. Was
Mm-hmm.
that part of the intention?
Oh, absolutely. So in some ways, I mean, it's called Wild Enchantments, and the idea is that as you read each chapter, you gradually find yourself in a realm of experience that is very attuned to that plant. And the same, the just looking at the paintings, uh, and the more you work with them, the stronger that effect becomes. So they're literally creating a doorway to enter into a realm of experience that hopefully helps people then go to the actual plant and deepen that with the actual plant. So it's a bit like creating doorways in consciousness that encourage and uh, give people some tools to go into that.
Yeah, I can see that. And the pictures are so beautifully done. And I'm just looking at the front cover and I'm seeing this beautiful bower of roses, but also the rose hips, because of course, you know, that's the rose hips are as important as the flowers. And then we have moths around and we have all sorts of beautiful scenery, and we see the roots of the plant as well. And there is a lot of symbolism in there, but it's so, I mean, I see I think I see the feminine symbol on the top right there of the rose picture, and then you've got a bird singing. I'm not sure whether that's a thrush, but it looks like it might be in the middle of the rose bush. And so you've got this whole landscape that I could spend ages just looking at and diving into. And the rose is one of my favorite plants. I'm sure I'm not alone in that. You've got the smell, but the dog rose is just beautiful, and that's a plant that I've known all my life really, and always enjoyed. Always loved meeting it when I've gone for a walk in the countryside or along the shore, even because it grows quite a lot along the shore here where I live. And then just, you know, grazing on the rose hips in winter, or not in winter, but in autumn. And, you know, uh, just tasting the fruit. And then I've talked a lot about rosehip syrup, and I do tend to forage for rosehips in autumn and make rosehip syrup now, you know, just as a source of vitamin C in winter. But in one painting, you've got all of these elements, and I love the way that Fiona has brought all of those together. It's not just the rose, with all of the plants, 33 plants, I note as well. Was that deliberate?
Yes, yes. So I think, yeah, the level of detail in the paintings. Uh, Hopefully, what that means is each person finds a different doorway in. For some people, it might be the geometries. For some people, it might be the animals. For some people, it might be the ogam. Or so there's you know, five different people will find different things to speak to them in the same painting, and that's part of the idea here, is
Yeah.
to encourage that.
So you have the book, and you also have a deck of oracle cards. I don't think that's the right way to
Well,
describe them. Do you call
yes,
them oracle cards?
I think they can be used as oracle cards. I think for sure they can be used as oracle cards. We tend to call them plant wisdom cards
Yeah.
because there's so many different ways you could work with them. I mean, the thing that's always been close to my heart is the way we've designed the box for them is it doubles up as a frame, uh,
Mm,
and the idea being you can just work with one plant and put that on a shrine and have that as a meditation point over a whole moon cycle.
lovely.
In
Lovely
that
idea.
time, you're committing to deepening into knowing that plant. So it provides quite a useful anchor point, rich in the symbolism, for you to then keep coming back to and then reference to your own experiences. That's the bit that speaks to me most. As an oracle, they do. I'd say there's definitely a learning curve with them because we've consciously chosen not to put any words, not even the plant name, on the cards.
Yeah, I noticed that.
That was very
Interestingly, yeah.
intentional. Yeah, that was very intentional because the last thing we wanted to do, with either with the artwork or with the writing, was to box anything in or kind of limit it by words. So there's definitely a bit of a learning curve of starting to recognize, get to know each of the plants a bit, spend your own time with them, and of course, the deeper your connection with each of these plants, the more powerful it becomes as an oracle deck.
Yeah, I can see that. And, you know, I did work with them a little bit before we started recording this. And the first card that I drew was
Mhm.
was Angelica. And Angelica is, I mean, it's just such a statuesque, beautiful card. But when I read some of the words associated with them, and you're very clear that these words aren't meant to be chapter and verse of our experience with, but you know, they're just it's you talk about a correspondence, and you talk about forming a relationship with, and there may be just guides to forming that relationship. But it really spoke to me because Angelica is such a tall plant, and then we have swans rising up, flying up out of the marshy land. We've got some water behind the plant, and I've always loved Angelica. I've always loved the taste of candied Angelica as a child. We used to get it on cakes as a child, and I loved that. I've never tasted the raw root, but I've always adored the taste of Angelica. And then I see that it's some of the correspondences are with breath, with opening up our breath, of soaring high. And it just so spoke to me in that moment. I absolutely loved it. But you're right. I mean, I kind of know what most of the plants here look like. So I know what I'm looking for when I draw a card. But for a lot of people, it will take a little bit of a learning curve, won't it?
I think it's intended that way. It's intended that something that you could keep on learning from for years. It's very dense in doorways, and if you were to follow every one we suggested, it would keep you busy for quite a while, I think. So hopefully, what happens is you just go to what you're drawn to, and those are your starting point with any plant. But yes, and you talk about Angelica and the breath. I mean, what's really important to me is absolutely everything is a real life experience. And as such, it's also possible to experience. So, for instance, with Angelica, I must have held 50, 100 ritual circles with Angelica. And even though there's a variation in each individual's experience of working with Angelica, there are themes that are constant amongst that individual variation. And bit by bit, you start to learn what those themes are. And for instance, with Angelica and breath, the theme of feeling the Angelica touch something within the breathing and the lungs, and the sense of expansion, the sense of opening up into a bigness of self and of breath, is definitely a very constant theme whenever I've worked ritually with Angelica. And everybody's going to experience that differently. And it's not always as straightforward as the plant gives this invitation and you get this lovely experience of expansion. A lot of the time, it can actually be the opposite. So, for instance, if for instance, there is a lot of congestion or a lot of grief held in the lungs, it might be that you work with Angelica and it's as if the Angelica shines a spotlight on that.
Yeah.
And you actually become more aware of the congestion and the contraction. Okay, so this is a really important point. It's moving away from the idea that you take something and something happens.
Yes.
That you approach the plant as a teacher, and that teacher reflects something back to you. It doesn't just fix you. It doesn't just solve a problem. It gives you a reflection of what's actually going on within you. And that's where the deeper teachings are, is the engagement with the reflection the plants give. And so that's very much an underlying principle in the book and in the school, is we're calling on plants as teachers, as mirrors, not so much as medicines. And it's a very different approach.
And I like that approach. I think that approach is wonderful because, again, I'm constantly talking about living in line with nature. Well, the way to live in line with nature is to use nature as a teacher, as a friend, as as part of us. And so, just to me, in a sense, just taking something as a medicine can be a little bit like you're just using a part of you. It's like not honoring, to me, what we're doing.
I think a really good example would be the difference between just having a cup of tea with a friend, and that's great. It's a social thing. It's enjoyable. I do it all the time. I'm
Me
just
too.
talking about sort of normal tea, builder's tea.
Yeah, me too.
Between that and spending 2 hours in a tea ceremony where you're spending half an hour sipping and meeting.
I love
tea.
that. Yeah.
It's the same plant. The difference is the intention we're bringing to it. And
that's a brilliant way. It's a brilliant way of describing it. Yeah.
So we're wanting to encourage this intention of reverence, of of the trust and belief that there is so much more to learn here,
Mm-hmm.
and the trust and belief that there is a teacher within this plant that can teach, that can change us if we want it to. And
Yeah.
so it's not a question of what plant and how much. This is what I've discovered, of my time in clinic. It what seems to be more important is how are we approaching this? Well, what is our implicit intention when we take a plant? What is our implicit intention? Because often we would just get that reflected back. If it's for something to happen, there might be something happens. If it's to receive a teaching, then we receive a teaching. So there's something about being really clear how we are approaching, and with that, moving away from what's happened with a lot of things. And I guess this is just part of late stage capitalism, is a commodification of everything.
Yeah. And that's what I was
Everything.
trying to get at, kind of, right?
Yeah.
This is a commodification of
Yeah.
herbs. Yeah.
It becomes a commodity. It becomes a product with a specific use that is marketed for that specific use.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with that, but you're not even scratching the surface of what each plant can be. And that's what we want to encourage, is to dive beyond that surface level that's very prevalent in our culture,
Yeah.
into these plants as living beings that actually predate us in evolutionary terms. They're way older than us. They've gone through many iterations of the world and nature, and all of that is woven into their being, into their genetics, into their structure, into everything. And so that wisdom of millions of years of evolution is there within them. And I do think that that's what is touched when we work with a plant, is their ancient wisdom awakens our ancient wisdom. I think that's part of what happens when we approach plants like this, is it's an awakening of something we actually already know in ourselves. And the plants touch that.
And I think that I've been sensing some of that as I've worked with the book and the cards in a very small way so far, because we've just seen the book come out, and but yeah, I got that sense, and I got that sense of, even though I am not in front of the actual plant,
Mm-hmm.
I get the sense, because the images are so beautiful and the words are so beautifully written, I have to say. I get the sense of being in the presence of the plant. And of course, that takes us back to, the quantum effect, et cetera, et cetera. Nothing, we're not separate from anything. And so we can put our conscience or consciousness onto a plant, even though it's not actually physically there in front of us. And, we don't have to pick a plant to take it home and, work with it or anything like that. So I found that really refreshing.
Well, that's
That.
really good to hear. I mean, that was the intention, and of course, a painting and words are derivative. They're
Yes.
not the actual plant,
Yeah.
and so we're very aware of that. It's the best we can do to bring something of that consciousness through. And I learned something in the writing process, and I think this is me just slowly kind of maturing as a writer, because this is our third book now, and starting to understand what writing in this way felt like. And I realized that what had to happen is I had to feel the plant in the room with me. I had to feel its presence, and the words that came, it's as if they gave form to the outline of this presence. The words can never be the plant themselves, but they can point in the direction. So
Exactly.
it felt like my job as a writer was to just stay within the realm of this presence, and let the words flow in that resonated with it and pointed towards it. And
Yeah.
well, once I clocked that, it was just such a joy to write each chapter.
I love that. I love that. And while you're describing that process, it reminds me of an artist, Mark Rothko. And the first time there used to be a big room in the old Tate Modern gallery in London where there were just Rothkos on every wall. And I remember the first time I went into that room, I was about 15. And I was absolutely blown away. Now, these are just huge, huge, huge canvases with just blocks of color, but there was something about them.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt a presence. I felt something from them. And many years later, I read that Rothko, when he was painting, cut himself off from everything, you know, shut himself away in a room and meditated and prayed while he was painting. So his entire consciousness was going onto that canvas. And I thought, that's what you can feel.
Oh, I recognise that, and it would seem a good point to apologise to all those friends I've neglected, because
Yeah.
once I just needed to be in that monofocus
Yes.
of prayer, because
Mm-hmm.
it was that so clear that if I wasn't, nothing came through that was then good. The writing was no good. But when I was in that place of prayer, then the words flowed, and they had their own dance to them. But I sort of discovered that the muse is very demanding of one's attention.
Yes,
And I think
exactly.
quite jealous, potentially quite jealous. So I've had to give an immense amount of my energy to that this past year in particular. And yeah, I'm glad, but it's definitely at the cost of not being in the world in other ways. So being in the
Absolutely.
foreground.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it is really not quite being in the world. You're sort of in a, and you talk about liminal spaces. So you're in a
Mhm.
kind of a liminal space when you're
Yeah.
doing it that way. And so tell me, talk a little bit more about this liminal space that you're inviting people into.
Oh, okay. I mean, liminality is such a core concept within all my work, and I guess I would say that it's similar to the experience of what happens at dusk or dawn, or what happens. Say you're walking in a wood and you just suddenly notice your mind has gone quiet, and you're feeling the presence of the wood around you, or you're maybe walking by the sea and suddenly everything else has disappeared and it's just you and the rocks and the cliff and the sea. It's going into a different realm of experience where the mind isn't involved. It's an experiential place where the whole body is in a flow and a flux with whatever you're in a relationship with. And I think I would discern the liminal space from a space of mentation, a space of thought and making sense of and processing. And of course, our culture tends to still prioritize mentation as a desirable thing to do, to be able to think rationally, to form ideas, to put them into words clearly. But to go into this realm of experience actually often means dropping deeper into the body, dropping into the heart, dropping into the breath, dropping into the physical body, and coming into a place of receptivity and mutability. And I've been teaching over 20 years now, and what I notice is when people start this sort of work, they would drop into a place of experience, and often they would bounce right back up to their minds to try and make sense of it. And so they might spend 10 seconds or less in a realm of experience, and then 10 minutes analyzing the experience.
Yeah, yeah,
And so I think there's something we can cultivate, which is where we stay in that liminal space, stop trying to analyze and make sense until it's time to, and just let that experience flow through us. And that's a large part of, I guess, what I see deepen in students in the school. The longer they do it, the more able they are to drop into that space of conscious dreaming, you could say, of allowing the presences around us to affect us, and allowing ourselves to be moved by them.
yeah.
So,
And some people might maybe describe it as allowing spirit to flow through you.
yeah.
People who are of that mind, that mindset.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I had a very interesting discussion. There's a very radical priest in Stroud called Simon, and we once met up for a walk, and he was fascinated about how to listen to how to feel trees. And one bit I remember from that walk was he was wondering if the consciousness or the energies of trees was an aspect of the Holy Spirit.
Aha.
Of course, for him, his model is the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And I just was really touched of thinking that from his perspective within that Christian modality, the voice of each tree was a fragment or a prism or a particular vibration of Holy Spirit speaking through. So yeah, that was
Yeah, that is really interesting, isn't it? But it in the end, I think it probably always comes down to the same thing. That is just consciousness, it is just spirit, whatever you want to call it. It's the same thing, I think, that we're all trying to describe, and words don't often
No.
allow us to.
Well. That's one thing I really like in the book. We've drawn on kennings a lot. Did you notice that?
I did, yeah, I did.
Uh, and the idea of kennings, they're pairs of words that somehow, when you put the words together, they evoke something more than each word individually. Yeah,
Yeah,
so it's trying to get beyond the constraints of language into something a bit more poetic, a bit more lyrical that evokes a feeling.
yeah, I did notice that. And yeah, I mean, also just, yeah, just ways of describing, um, very simple things like St. John's wort. There's 3 lines here: radiant sword, seer of light, holy anointment, talking of religion, holy anointment, piercing rays, shrinking mental demons to their true size. Now, that's a poetic way of describing how St. John's wort might work with a person, with a being. And rose, you've got few herbs have quite the power to gather scattered parts of ourselves as rose, to soften, warm, and open our hearts to the very things we are most scared of, which is something that I recognize with Rose as well. That softening of the heart and opening, and yeah, opening you to the things that you're scared of. So there's a dance in the writing that I think is really beautiful to partner with when you read the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So,
thank you. No, I really enjoyed that aspect of it, and as much as possible, the prose slips into the lyrical and then comes back to the slightly more pragmatic,
yeah,
and I kind of like to have a bit of a to and fro there, because grounding it in a sort of manifest pragmatic, which is also why we've included a lot of endnotes with all the research
you
papers
have, yeah,
as
you have,
well, and each chapter has a slightly more pragmatic kind of functional ending part.
yeah,
So there's something about seeing how these can weave together, how the dream can weave with manifest reality, because too much in the reductionism, and you lose the dream, you lose the magic, and too much in the dream, and it can easily become an escapism from manifest reality.
mm,
So for me, the sweet spot is where you can learn to dance between the two. You can
yeah,
let your dreams inform your manifest reality, and let your manifest reality deepen your dream. So there's this idea of the lemniscape flowing through the whole book.
yeah. I love that. I love it. And so you have not just herbs, as in flowers and plants that flower. You have the fly agaric. You
Yeah.
mentioned that, which a lot of people will be aware of as we come up to Christmas, as the red mushroom with white spots.
Mm.
And you talk about the fly agaric, you talk about trees, you have hawthorn and you have elder, um, two favorites of mine, and two trees that I regularly will gather the berries from again in autumn, but also the flowers. I was born in May, so I love, well, it doesn't necessarily naturally follow, but I do love the smell of Mayflower.
Mm.
It's really redolent of new beginnings, spring. I just love it. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, and of course, Mayflower, like elderflower, the smell shifts quite dramatically
yes,
at
it
certain
does.
stages of the flowering. So when the flowers are really fresh, it's quite different from, say, 2 day old flowers.
Yes.
Uh, and
Yeah.
and in the older flowers, there's even a slightly rotting like smell to them.
Or some people say it's a bit like cat's pee, but
Yes, yes. Well, elderflowers, particularly, yes.
yeah, yeah. So and then you've got, wild garlic, which again I love, and I gather in springtime. Um and some of the paintings that Fiona's done around these are just exquisite, as I've said already. But you see that what I love about the paintings is that you see the whole plant in one. So you'll see bulb, you'll see the
Yeah.
root, you'll see the leaves, you'll see the flower. And
Yeah.
then with something which also has autumn berries, you'll see the berries as well in the same
Yeah.
painting.
I think it was important that all the paintings and particularly the sketches in the book are botanically accurate.
Yeah, yeah.
So she does an incredible job of weaving together that botanical accuracy with the metaphorical and the lyrical.
No, she does. Absolutely. And, as I say, they are beautiful. You can lose yourself in them. Now, we've talked about, and you've got mistletoe here as well, which is another favorite of mine. And she has an apple showing in that picture as well, which obviously mistletoe is known for growing on apple trees, amongst others. I used to have some apple trees where I lived once in North Herefordshire and had lots of mistletoe there. And I'm quite fond of mistletoe. And the lovely thing you say about mistletoe is born of bird and tree, never touching earth, of sky and stars, and dark solstice light. Because one of the points you make about mistletoe is that it never actually touches the ground. It it's it grows on a tree. The seed is planted in the tree bark. It grows on the tree bark. Birds eat the berries, and they take the seed to another tree, and it
Mm-hmm.
gets planted there.
Absolutely.
And I'd never thought of it that way before.
No,
Never
it's
thought
quite
of
an
it.
amazing thought, isn't it? That there could be generations and generations of mistletoe that has never touched the ground.
Yeah, exactly. And of course, then people pick it to kiss under Christmas. But that's another aspect of it that you talk about, if I recall rightly.
Well,
Um,
I mean, I think one thing I did is part of writing this was trying to really get to the bottom of some research and really not take anything at face value, because the thing about herbalism is the more you dive into any story, the more ambiguous it becomes quite where that story came from and where it originated. There's a lot of repetition that happens in herbalism, and I think that is part of the reason for making this book entirely experiential. So there's very little second-hand information. It's first-hand information, uh, because something can get lost with too many repetitions. But this the story of mistletoe. What I did find is there's older Norse traditions of it being a plant uh, for making peace under, for laying
yeah.
down weapons under.
Mm.
And it's sort of interesting to reflect on how that might have turned into a place one kisses under.
I think
Uh,
it's great. I love that.
yes, yeah, to lay down our armor and find connection.
Yeah,
It makes
absolutely. I thought,
sense.
yeah, and so the book is full of little things like that, which I loved. And I haven't, read it all, but I've dived into bits that caught my eye. And
No,
as I say, sorry,
I don't think it's a book that you could read in one go.
no.
I think it's too dense for that. I think you need to sort of take a chapter or two at a time and let it percolate through.
Well, I think so, but also, it's just going through the book. I'll see one of the paintings, one of the illustrations, and I'll think, oh, that's gorgeous. And then I'll be drawn to the words. And then, so there is a journey. You said that it's a bit like a journey. It is, you see this gorgeous painting, and then you think, oh, oh yeah, mistletoe. Oh yeah, oh, I never knew that about it. Oh, and things reveal themselves to you. That's not working with the cards as an oracle deck or a plant wisdom deck, but just it just takes you on a journey
Mm-hmm.
of revelation, which I think is gorgeous. And I've got one question which may be going through some people's minds right now.
Mm-hmm.
Herbalism, we know, and you're a herbalist, is an age-old way of medicating, shall we say. Now, we're talking about this book and the card deck being a way of moving through all of that, having an experience, having a learning experience, experiencing the plant without the plant being there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, would you go as far as to say that on that quantum level, by engaging with that plant, some healing could occur?
Could you rephrase that? I
Yeah.
didn't
So,
quite what the
okay.
question is.
So we don't have the plant in front of us, but we
Yes.
are we're feeling into the plant
Well,
through the words and
well,
through the vision.
yeah. So one way I often put that is if you say you visited an incredible mountain somewhere, the fact that you're 2,000 miles away from that mountain doesn't change the existence of that mountain. It still exists. The beingness of it exists. The consciousness of it exists. And in the same way, you don't necessarily need the physical plant right there for the consciousness of it to exist. So yes.
So you're tapping into the consciousness. It was just, I know that some people will be sitting there thinking, well, does that mean that you can actually get the healing effect of that
Oh,
plant? But
well, absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely. But I think it takes a bit more understanding and discipline to let that
yeah,
healing in, or more to be more specific. I think it takes choice. I think it takes
nice.
choice to let
Yeah,
that in.
yeah.
So you can experience a realm of consciousness, say St. John's wort, and that can just be an experience, and then it's gone. Or it can be an experience that you take as a teacher and you choose to let in. And what I've discovered in my work in my clinic is that conscious choice, that active, sovereign point of choice the individual makes is critical. And that point of choice is like stepping through a doorway of commitment to yourself. And it's so easy. I think one problem we have that can happen throughout medicine is a power dynamic of practitioner client,
Mm, mm.
where in many subtle ways, the practitioner is actually making the choices and the client is handing over their sovereignty to them. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's really good to be conscious of what's happening there. And particularly over the past 15 years, I've been really trying to deconstruct what happens within a therapeutic encounter and what it means for the choices and the journeys to come from the other, not from me. So I'm there as a companion on their journey and their choices. And when you do that, the potency of the medicine is so much more. I mean, it's quite possible to work in a way that I hold a space of practitioner and I bring the consciousness and I bring about changes. It is possible to do that. But the longer I've been in practice, the more I've pulled back from that to taking a back seat to letting them discover their own journey. And what I found is that actually creates more potent, often faster and often longer term healing responses when people are actively involved in their own journey. So that's going a little bit into sort of complexities of the power dynamics of a therapeutic encounter, but it feels really relevant here because it's about relationship.
Well, I absolutely applaud the fact that you're doing that because it's something that I am very aware of and conscious of and have been for a long, long time, and would love to see more people taking back their power in their own healing. And I'd love to see more practitioners just being the guide and the companion, and and allowing the
Mhm.
the patient, shall we say, to yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
to take control.
It's difficult to find the right word. I'm
Yeah.
not so fond of either patient or client.
No, I don't like either
Yeah,
either. But,
a,
but what do you say?
a fellow traveller,
Yeah.
perhaps. It's
Yeah.
difficult to find a language for that, but it's quite a sticky thing because it is
Mm,
actually deeply countercultural
I know.
to take that approach, and it's not easy. It's
I
not
know.
easy to because when I train herbalists, what I see is individuals have to deconstruct a lot of conditioning around what a healer is, what a doctor is, and they've got to deconstruct implicit authority projections within themselves before they can inhabit a space of inviting that in another. So there's a lot of work to do around that. It's not straightforward.
Oh yeah, totally agree with you on that. And yeah, no, I don't like the word healer. I don't like the word patient, client. I don't like any of those words. I don't. I never know what to. I never know what to use. So, yeah, maybe
I mean,
we.
the way I think of myself is I'm somebody who's committed my life to sitting within a council of plants and learning from them. And then people come to me, and for a while, I'm a companion on their journey. So I'm drawing on what I've learned to help them. Often when people are at a bit of a dark point in their journey and feeling a bit lost. So I'm just walking alongside them until they start to really find their own confidence and they're clear on their direction. That's how I tend to visualize my work now.
Well, I think that's brilliant. And I think it's an excellent place to end. Well, actually, I could talk to you for hours, but we only have a certain amount of time. It is a great place to end. Wild Enchantments, a fantastic book and card deck, Wild Enchantments by Nathaniel Hughes and Fiona Owen. And it's one of, I don't often, I mean, I see lots of fabulous books, but this one is just, for me, special. So thank you so much for creating it or co-creating it with Fiona. And I always ask at the end of these interviews, where can people find out more about you, more about your work? Can people get in touch with you, learn from you? Where do they go?
I think the website for School of Intuitive Herbalism is the first place, and then that has links to where we sell the books from.
Okay.
And it has a resource page that keeps on growing, and a few online courses which are good starting places.
And that's School of Intuitive Herbalism dot.
I think it's just intuitiveherbalism.org.uk.
Is
I
it?
think. Yeah, it's easy enough to find.
Okay.
Yeah, and most of my work now is actually training. So it's broadly 4 to 7 year apprenticeship style trainings.
Fabulous. Yeah.
But now we've got quite a few graduates of the school. We're able to offer a lot more introductory level work, mentoring with graduates, and the online course. So there are ways into this work without that sort of 7 year commitment, which is quite a major thing, and it's an incredible privilege to work with people who feel that calling and feel that
Yeah.
vocation.
Oh, it must be wonderful. And yeah, it's maybe it's something that I might have embarked on a while back. And but for now, I'm just really, really pleased that I can meet people like you who are doing such fantastic work. And it really does chime with me. It's yeah, it's where I think it's where we need to be going, or where we need to be not going anywhere, because we just are. You know what I'm trying to say.
I think it's true. I think more than anything, we need to deepen into reciprocal relationship
Yes, thank
and
you.
respect. I think that's at the core of it. To
Yeah,
move away from sort of using nature as a commodity to being in dynamic relationship with it. So I think that's
yeah.
what we really need.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much for now. To anybody watching and listening, buy the book, get the cards, and delve into this, because I can't praise enough. And yeah, it's this is going to be my winter thing. I'm going to be sitting in a corner, in a cozy corner, and opening up the book and just going down that rabbit hole. Although that doesn't sound very nice, but you know what I mean, going down a rabbit hole into the whole kind of landscape of what these different plants can do. So thank you so much.
33 rabbit holes, each branching into myriad of other rabbit holes.
Yeah, exactly. But that's lovely. I love that. That's brilliant. Thank you so
Wonderful.
much. Thank you for providing the rabbit holes. That's what I'll say.
That is what we set out to do.
Brilliant.
Thank
Thanks
you.
so much.
Okay.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Just a reminder, healing is from the inside out. I know I say that all the time, but it really is an inside out process. And I can't heal you. Nathaniel can't heal you. The only person, the plants can help you, but ultimately it's you who can heal you. So, with that in mind, I do recommend, though, that you go on a little bit of a journey with Nathaniel and Fiona's book, and see where it takes you, because I'm sure it'll lead you down a truly healing path. It already has done with me. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe if you do like this content and you want to find out what's coming up. Until the next time, bye-bye.